I'm Zen Perry. I'm here with Shane Trimble, the guitarist from High Reeper, and gonna chat about some metal today. Chat about the works that you guys have been doing. Talk about your road time. Talk about some of your albums and music. And yeah, very excited to have you on the show today. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, just as we were just talking about, you're from Delaware, right?
Yes, I am indeed.
And then we also, I guess, is some of the band from Philadelphia as well. Is that correct?
We're really from Delaware. Just some guys live in Philadelphia, moved to Philadelphia.
Gotcha.
I went to high school here, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool. All right, let's take it way back to the start. All right.
Okay.
So you're a kid, you're growing up. When did you first get into metal? When did you get into heavy rock? What were you first listening to?
Well, I grew up around my cousins. I was born in '72. Okay, so I grew up like when metal was kind of like really just starting, I guess, in some ways, I guess you would say. And I had the good fortune of I grew up in a house that was it was the house my father grew up in. So my cousins, because their mom had grew up in this house, they were just around all the time because it was her, she grew up in the house when we were kids. I have cousins there. I guess they started probably about 5 years. I mean, I have a bunch of cousins, but this particular family, who was the children of my father's sister, their father, to whom I'm not related, was a musician. He went to Berkeley and stuff. They would come to my house, and they were older than me. So they turned me on to all of the good '70s music. They were like metalhead freaks. I mean, like one was like the Black Sabbath guy, and then the girl, she loved Priest and Iron Maiden, like totally crazy. Another one, he loved like Ted Nugent and Kiss and Alice Cooper and all that shit. And then the other one, he kind of liked he was like a Beatles freak and stuff. So I grew up, and my mom listened to AM radio. I grew up on AM radio. So I was kind of bombarded with a lot of good music just as a child. And but the metal stuff all came from my cousins. I mean, 5 years old, I was like drawing pictures of like the cover of like, I don't know, like maybe like a Live 2 or something with my cousin because he could draw. And I was like drawing pictures of Gene Simmons and shit.
So that's like you just went around the whole board of that sort of whole that music scene. Yeah, especially I guess for back in the day, like kind of a girl being into Judas Priest and all that stuff. That's pretty rad.
Yeah, I mean, like, like the thing about that is that, like, of course at the time it seems like nothing. And same with AM radio, because it's really important to remember that, at the advent of like, let's say modern rock and roll, right? So let's say in the '60s, right? But after the Beatles, like after that kind of style, right? When things started getting heavier with bands like, Led Zeppelin and Sabbath and Jeff Beck group's first record and all that kind of shit. It did not take very long for music to start to evolve. It started evolving rapidly. So you went from stuff that was like really blues based kind of stuff. And then it morphed. You started getting this progressive stuff even right away with like King Crimson, and then later with Yes and stuff. But then you also started to get guys like Jeff Lynne once he like wrested control of like ELO away from Roy Wood, and Roy Wood went and made Wizard. Jeff Lynne went into like much more complicated side of the Beatles songwriting, but with the total pop like thing for it. And then you had the Bee Gees. They were already making records, but they didn't start making like what became popular for them for a little bit more. But you're talking songwriting went from 12-bar blues to like extremely complex key changes, and just as really far away from how it started, really rapidly. And what was really cool as a child, and this is what I was saying, what you don't know, this shit is happening when it's happening. It all becomes part of you musically. So back then, we'd be driving around the car and listen to AM radio, and you would hear God knows what, all kinds of shit, but much more, but stuff that was kind of far away from that like, like the electric blues kind of, it had already started with the crazy songwriting and all, which is great, and at that same time, metal, it kind of, what happened is like you had music that was all really closely related and it quickly kind of diverged, and you had this whole metal scene going on. And my cousins, while I was listening on my mom's music, my cousins got me down and dirty with metal.
Yeah. So I mean, as somebody who's pretty much never listened to AM radio, what was about it? What were you like listening to on AM radio, or like what was there just some sort of different reason that you were listening to AM radio in particular?
Well, FM really wasn't happening yet. So and AM radio kind of had you could hear kind of a broad cross section of whatever was going on musically. I mean, like, not, yeah, it was just, I don't know how to describe it. It just lots of shit was on there, and it was good. It was a really good musical education when you're young, but you don't know that's what I'm saying, is that these things that happen to you in life, sometimes they don't really bear fruit till a lot of years later, and it's just kind of dumb luck.
Yeah, no, that's cool, and that's why I always like kind of ask people about their beginnings. I want to just hear what made because musicians are a little weird, so like what brings people to the point they are, and it's usually a good look back at as a kid.
Yeah, that stuff really sticks with you because it informs your sense. It informs you as a musician without, like I said, without you knowing it. So it immediately, all that stuff, and you can see the difference with people who are younger, who grew up listening to gridded, corrected music, is as a bass player, when I was a bass player, if you play with them, you immediately know that, and this is not bad, by the way, this is only describing a difference. They're just so much more on top of the beat. They don't have a lot of elasticity in terms of their meter, and it's difficult in most cases for them to play a little bit behind the beat and slow down. Now, like I said, that's not a bad thing at all. In fact, I wish that I would play more like that, but it's just, I have to think about it too much. I don't really play like that. But Tyler does, who's our bass player now, which is great. I like it because I like that difference in the band and from when I was playing bass and behind all the time, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely want to kind of get into that because in other interviews I've seen with you kind of talk about how you kind of like to be the free agent of where you go musically, and you like kind of the other people to focus on the riffs and the I guess the more grading of what you're talking about. But yeah, I kind of even see that point being made. There's like two schools of people. There's like the really like, especially in the town I was just living in, where it's like you got like the funk people who are like right on the beat all the time, and it's like got to be perfect. And then you got the the quote unquote fucking cool kids who are like kind of it's all sloshy, kind of all over the place, and you got that like kind of that dragging sort of feeling, even if it's like fast tempo. It's not supposed to be perfect. What kind of if you think your classmates had to describe you as a kid, how do you think they would describe you?
Obsessed with Greek mythology. I mean,
okay.
They all say that from when I was young, because I like read every book in the library on Greek mythology when I was a kid. Seriously, I was a voracious reader. I was reading like, well, yeah, I was just a voracious reader. Let's just say I read nonstop. I don't read anymore, by the way.
You don't read. You got all of it out of the front end of your life.
Yeah. I don't. I certainly don't. Let's just say I don't read fiction at all. There's no chance of getting me to read fiction.
Yeah.
Well, I will sometimes read. I read things to learn only. Like I read not for pleasure. Let's say that.
Do you still have a favorite Greek mythology story, or is that just like not? And you're just done with it?
Yeah, but when I was a kid, I was always lugging around some kind of Greek mythology book.
Dude, that's rad. I don't know how you're dismissive of it.
We really did. We had a very small library. It was an old house in our little town, and I really did read every book on Greek mythology. I mean, I can't tell you how many there were, but maybe It was like not like 100, but probably more than 50.
Yeah, Greek mythology's been around for some time, so I'd imagine there's a decent amount of books about it. I'm not a professional on the subject, but I would
That's
imagine.
what described it now.
Yeah,
I mean, one girl actually, like, I don't know, a few years ago even said that, like, she actually really did say that. That's why I said that, because she was just talking about us being little kids and doing that.
that's rad. It's always a cringy thing when somebody brings up my middle school years. I'm like, all right, you can, yeah, you can stop right there. Yeah. So when did you actually start playing music? Were you kind of how much in your life were your cousins that kind of brought you up in all this like wild music that you're listening to for back in the day?
Okay, it's funny because although my cousins, there's four of them, three boys and a girl. Only the eldest one played music. And their father, like I said, he went to Berkeley. He was a bass player, but no one in my family. Like I said, I was not related to their father. No one in my family was a musician. So, although I wanted to play music, like my friend had a piano, and when I would go to his house, I would try and play it. It was not until fourth grade when I started playing trumpet. I was a trumpet player. So whatever age you are in fourth grade, I don't know what that is, maybe 11. I don't know. I actually don't know. It could be 11.
I think it's like 8.
Could be what it is.
It doesn't matter.
But yeah, so it was, and we had recently moved out of that house. And then what happened was that a friend of mine who I met when I was 5, I ended up being his neighbor. His older brother his father had like a squeeze box. He had acoustic guitar that had organ. His brother played everything, and he played everything too. I just started playing all the instruments at their house, and one of my other friends had a drum set, and that's really how it really started. But I didn't get my first. I got a bass when I was probably like in 5th grade. I could have been 6th grade. Okay. And I got a guitar, and I got a Strat in like 7th or 8th grade. I think it was 8th grade, but it could have been 7th.
Who do you think your biggest influences were for when you were first in that position? Were you trying to immediately make covers, or were you started writing music, or were you just making
No, I wasn't even entertaining writing music. I just wanted to play. At that time, I don't even know. I mean, I was listening to Ozzy and fucking like, I'm trying to think, 4th grade, like fucking Duran. Zeppelin, of course, Zeppelin and Bowie and that kind of shit. But I mean, I was just really I would just play whatever was on the radio. Whatever came on the radio, just play along with it. And more than anything, I think I just wanted to be like my friend's older brother, because he could, at least halfway play everything. So I was just trying to learn everything at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's how it goes. That's how I got into drumming. Was my sister's ex-boyfriend. I saw him play drum set one time, and I was like, that's what I need to do. Yeah. So
what I was going to say is that I never really had in mind to be a player. I just had in mind to learn it all. Mm-hmm. Like I wasn't like, oh man, I gotta like. I mean, that came later when I got more into being a guitar player, and then being a bass player. But at that time, I just wanted to know how to play everything. I mean, not for any real reason, just because it kind of like made sense. They're all just, I'm trying to say something without sounding like cheesy or something. Like, instruments are all the same to me. It's just like you just say, oh, I need to make this sound, so I gotta do this now or something. I don't know how to say it correctly or to say it without sounding like a douchebag. But that's the way I view it. I think that I'm the same player on every single instrument. Yeah. It's the same. I mean, like that. It's all the same. I mean, I don't know. Like I'm not better at anything. I mean, I'm certainly terrible at drums right now because I haven't played them for 20 years. But what I mean is that like I am the musician that I am, and if I play organ for a year, I'll be way better. I mean, right now I'm not playing keyboards in any way. I'm horrible, but I'm playing guitar a lot lately. So I'm playing guitar much better than I was for the 10 years I was playing bass. But if I just, it's all this, and I'm not saying anything good about my guitar playing. I'm just saying like, they're all the same to me. I just think like, oh, I got to make that sound now. So let me just make this sound.
Yeah. You're Shane, and you got some instruments around you, and that you're still you. Yeah.
Does sound like an asshole saying that? I don't know. I hate when people talk about being. I hate when people say, "Oh, Prince played 90 instruments," or what's the guy from Brian Jonestown? What's his name?
Oh man.
On Newcomb. Oh, he plays 94, and I'm like, what musician doesn't play? They're all the same. You just pick one up and you say, "Oh, I need it to sound like this." Okay, let me do that real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, you just there are musicians and they're players. I mean, I wish I was more of a player, but I think I'm just more of a musician.
Whenever you hear those stories about somebody playing like 90 instruments or whatever, you've never seen them like one by one plays something. I mean, it's like, yeah, they picked up 90 instruments.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, whatever. Everyone can do that who's a musician. They just haven't picked up a fucking harmonium or something,
Yeah, exactly. Which harmoniums are very cool.
Sure.
They're very fun to play. It's like one, whatever. Let's get out of that. What were the names of your first bands? What was like the first sort of shows you played?
I did not. My first band, I wasn't until I was 18.
Yeah.
And we're a local band. But we just kind of like first didn't, what were we called? The first one was there one before. It doesn't matter. It was like Fire Tribe, okay? And then that became Black Light Rainbow, which later we were like a popular local band and popular in New York. But at first we just did some like covers because we didn't know what we were doing. We were 18, and then we just ended up morphing into like a real band. It's very funny.
Yeah. What was it like? What were your first shows like?
It's just like, like house parties and shit.
Yeah. Were you getting in a lot of trouble back then?
Not really, nah.
No. You're just playing music for the love of it. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'd already quit drinking and doing drugs at that point. So I was like just chilling. I was just kind of that's when I was getting into being a guitar player, when I was starting to take lessons and really like try to be concentrate on guitar.
Yeah.
Right around 8 when I wanted it to be my instrument.
Yeah, and you've recently taken, I guess maybe last few years, you've taken some lessons again, right? Just kind of like brushed up.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, it just changed the way I was playing because I thought once I started playing guitar for the band, I was like, let me kind of, I had an idea of what the guitar playing should be like for guitar solos and shit. So I was studying with John Bjork a bunch. He's like and first of all, I want to say something about John. He's super great. He's a Swedish guy. He's a little bit younger than me, but he studied at GIT in the 90s. And not only is he's a super player and a super, super, super guy, but he's a great teacher. And the thing about guitar teachers or any kind of teacher, you have to find one who works for you. And John teaches in a way that, for me, it really works and makes sense. And it teaches a way I like to be taught. I mean, our lessons, I've been taking lessons for more than a year now. I still chat with him from time to time. It was all technique based. There's not theory or anything like that, really. I mean, I'd already studied that stuff. Not that I don't need to study more, but I'm fine with that. It was really only concentrating on technique. It was all technique.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You just need the licks to kind of keep it going, and what makes sure you're not hurting yourself or whatever.
Yeah, I would say really like, yeah, just the approach to become better technically. Like, how do you really, 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 because it's not fun. There's nothing fun about sitting around with a metronome and playing like at 105 BPM, like scales over and over and over, but when you understand that it's what you get out of it, it's really something else. It's like everything else. becoming technically proficient at any instrument, it's just like, it comes down to who's willing to fucking endure the shit. Becoming good at anything, it's always comes down to who's willing to endure what you have to endure in order to realize that. It's like becoming a runner. I used to be a runner. In my late 30s, I got into running. And I was a swimmer a little bit when I was a kid, but I wasn't like, I started playing basketball in my 20s, but later, whatever, I became a runner. And running, most especially, more than anything, because there is technique in terms of your form, but it's only about like, what can you survive? Like, what are you willing to do in order to get better? And you just have to you have to learn to love things that it seems difficult to love at first. And that's what it is, like improving your technique on guitar. It really is. There are no shortcuts. And
Yeah.
I so poorly. I got to say, like, because I would just sit around in my house and play finger style, play Jeff Beck blitz and stuff. Like just sit around playing like Jeff Beck stuff. And my technique was, I would hold a pick so infrequently because I only played fingerstyle bass that I was like, man, what the fuck is wrong with me? I went back to play this. I relearned this Jane's Addiction solo. Okay. And I remember there's nothing fast in it, but the one passage that's a little bit, not even fast, that you just have to pick it, just alternate pick it for, like, I don't know, a bar. I mean, I don't even know how many, it's less, whatever. It was so sloppy. And I was like, what is going on here, man? This is insane. I mean, I used to play this shit when I was 20. And it was all my picking. I forgot I was holding a pick like I had never held one before. And I said, okay, this is enough. And I first studied with this guy, Ben Eller, but our schedules, he was also a very good teacher, but our schedules didn't work out. And then later I got with John. And then I took a couple lessons from another insane shredder who's also super, super great. His name is David McDaniel. He's like incredible, but I only took a few lessons from Ben and David. The majority of it was John. And it's something I intend on revisiting with him. Right now, building a studio, we have a record to make, like just too much. I have too much shit to even like try and think, like take on improving my guitar playing right now.
Yeah. And that's an aspect of the band is the I think a lot of people don't realize is there's a million aspects to it. You got to market, you got to promote, you got to talk to people, you got to make sure your bandmates don't kill each other. The whole bunch.
And I'm kind of doing all those are my jobs. So right now I don't have time to try and be like, okay, I want to dedicate an hour or 2 hours a day to practice, because that's what it is. There's no way you can. It's a minimum of 1 hour of doing that shit.
Yeah. Kind of talking about what you were mentioning.
Sorry, I'm rambling.
No. It was a perfect tie into exactly what I wanted to get into. So it's you've switched between guitar and bass. You've mentioned that a few times now. So let's get into High Reeper. So how did you start this band? What were you first playing? How did you first start writing? It was formed back in 2016. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So our guitar player is no longer with the band. He had a like a kind of like a, I want to say like almost a like Kings of Leon style band is his project that I had been working on with him for 5 years, like kind of like helping him develop the sound or whatever. And we had just gotten done that, and I was just worn out from it. It was good for me because I learned, I mean, I didn't listen to Kings of Leon and stuff like that. I learned about that kind of music, and it was a good learning experience for me. And, but I was kind of wore out from it because it didn't really go anywhere. There's no real underground scene for that kind of shit. And there's just making records for for nothing. It was kind of a drag on all of us. I mean, but anyway, but I was playing bass, and our High Reaper's original drummer was also playing in that band. And so after about 6 months of not playing music, I was just like, man, I was like, okay, I want to make kind of like a Sabbath style band, like a old school metal kind of thing. And at first I was like, maybe I'll just get into playing the drums a little bit, and I'll just do everything myself and just make an instrumental record or something. I just want to write some riffs and shit. So Andrew, that's his name, our first guitar, our original guitar player with Pat. I mean, Pat's still in the band. And so I said, hey man, I don't know what to do. And our drummer now, Justin, we call him Devil. So I'm not going to be able to call him Justin. So his name's Devil to me. So that's what it is. So anyway, I'd originally thought like, maybe I'll get Devil to play, because I was wanting to play guitar, because Devil he's only 4 years younger than me, and he grew up on the OG side of metal, and he's the one who turned me on to death metal back when he was like 17 when I first met him. Like he turned me on to any kind of extreme metal. I mean, I was already listening to Slayer and shit, but I'm saying shit that was beyond Slayer. In like, I met him in '90. He graduated in '94, so I met him in '94. Anyway, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to switch back to guitar, and then I said to Andrew, I said, man, I'm thinking about making like a Sabbath style, like a heavy kind of music. I was like, will you sing? Because Andrew's he has a really great sense of melody. And I was thinking like, maybe it would be interesting to hear like really kind of like heavy shit with a melodic vocal. And he was like, I don't want to sing. He's like, it's Zach. Because Andrew and Zach had been in a band when they were young, like kind of a riff rock band, kind of. Less metal than we are, but it was like, like a hard rock riff rock. So I'm so washed out, this real driving me crazy. Anyway, so I said, all right. So Andrew's like, I'll talk to Zach, and I was like, all right, well, fuck it. Well, if you're not gonna play, or if you're not gonna sing, I guess I'll just play bass. And if I'm gonna be playing bass, I'll have naps, because we had been playing together, bass and drums we had already been playing together at least like 5 years. So at that point, it didn't make sense to bring in Devil, because I was going to be forced into playing bass. And I was just like, well, fuck it. I mean, I've been playing with naps. If I were going to play guitar, I would have said, let's bring Devil in now, because Devil and I have all the same language. It's very easy to say, oh, play this like the Stargazer intro. Oh, play this like that. Oh, play this like that. Like all of the same shit. It's super easy to reference. We share the same musical vocabulary when it comes to. Devil also was, grew up listening to everything. So I can talk about Journey to him as easily as I could talk about, Morbid Angel. And that's important for me. But at that time, like I said, I wasn't going to be playing guitar. So it wasn't, the band wasn't going to go in that direction yet, so it was not necessary. So Naps came in, and basically Naps and I wrote the entire first record, because Pat was living at the beach. Pat would come up, and Pat helped out too. Andrew was working all the time, and it kind of worked out that way. It wasn't intentional, but most, maybe with like the exception of Die Slow and the front part of whatever the last song is on the record, I don't remember.
Friend of Death. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, pretty much the rest of the record was just me and Naps. But I mean, Pat would come up, and then we get it together. So, I mean, as a songwriter, I always think that's somewhat unfair. When I think of it, I just say, hey, like in terms of publishing, everything's divided 5 ways, because I would never be writing this shit if I wasn't doing a project, So I mean, it doesn't matter. And now Pat and I, we pretty much just write this shit together. We have, at that time, it wasn't serious. We were just doing it for fun, and we thought that, like maybe we play like 6 shows and get drunk or something. And it was not intentional. And then things just got, the record got done, and things just got out of control, and then we had a record deal. It wasn't, but we had only played probably, I think we played 6 shows before we got a record deal, and I think we got signed our record deal on the 1 year from the day of our first show. I think so. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. So 2017?
The record came out in 2017.
20, what,
When did
20,
it come out? What year did?
2018.
Okay, yeah, then it was Halloween of 2017. We signed the record deal.
Okay, how the hell did that happen? Other than you guys sound amazing.
I will tell you really quickly. So, we had done the record, and we had just like, first of all, I had retired from playing metal a long time ago. I didn't even know that any kind of doom, stoner, underground scene like this existed. In the 90s, our roadies used to listen to Sleep. So I had to listen to Sleep all the time. We used to play with Carmen of Bern a bunch. I had no idea that they were still around, and I didn't know people even listened to any of this shit. I didn't listen to it. I don't fucking know. I just made, we just were making a record. I don't fucking know. So anyway, so we got it. We got the record done, and then we were just sharing it with people, and they were like, "Oh man, I like this," and like all of us were like, "What the fuck," like. And when we shared it, Elise from Heavy Temple was like, "Why don't you get a PR guy?" That we had this PR guy, Curtis Dewar. This was Elise saying. So I said, "Okay, yeah, sure." It's like, I don't know what it was. Curtis, if I say the number and it's wrong, I think it was like $400. Okay. So he said, "Sure, this sounds cool." He's like, just put it up on Bandcamp and say you're going to release it whenever. I said, "Okay, yeah, sure, fuck it, let's do that." So he's like, "We'll run a campaign for, I don't know what it's, 8 weeks or something." And then and Weedian, he was like, he picked it up and he was like, he started like promoting it a little bit on his Instagram. And then before it was to come out, people, I think maybe, I want to say it came out on Bandcamp or something like that. And I started getting messages from people like, "Hey, is somebody putting this out? Hey, what's going on?" And I'm like, "What the fuck is going on here?" And I was like, "Well, no." And then Zach was like, "Yo, get some motherfucker to put it out on vinyl." And I said, "Okay, man, yeah, like, what the fuck do we care? We started this with no intentions of doing anything." So I was like, "Yeah, I don't know what the fuck." So I was like, "Oh man." So then I just started doing a deep dive into the whole scene. I was like, "Oh, okay, there's this whole scene. All right, I got it. All right." So, and I was like, let me start looking at these labels and seeing who's who. And I was like, "Oh man, Heavy Psych Sounds would be awesome. That would be," I was like, "That's who I want to be on." So I wrote them and I got no response. And so I had gotten like a bunch of messages from a bunch of people, but then I was like also like reaching out to people beyond those who would message me. Heavy Psych Sounds being one of them, and no response. And then the messages kept rolling in, and so Niels from Cursed Tongue, he was like, "Hey, I can't put out this record. I love it. I could put out, your second record, but," he's like, I have too many releases. He's like, "My schedule's set, but I'll find somebody to put it out." And then he's like, "Have you talked to this guy?" I was like, "Yeah." They said, "No." And he's like, "Did you talk to this guy?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we had already had, at this time, we had offers, let's say, from like 3 labels. I said, "Man, I really want to be on Heavy Psych Sounds." And he's like, "Well, let me message Gabrielle right now." I said, "Well, I already messaged him and he didn't respond." He's like, "It's okay." So I said, "Hey man," Neil said, I'm chatting with Neil in Messenger, and he's like, "Hey, check this band out." And I want to say that Curtis had done so much for us because we had gotten positive write-ups, like the reviews had been very positive, and Curtis had kind of, I'm on the press team now, HPS. I work for the label also. So I understand how all this shit works. And it was kind of a miracle that he was able to get us written up anywhere, because we were, we're unsigned and all this stuff. Anyway, so then I started to talk with Gabe at HPS, and then that it kind of, over the next couple of days of back and forth. Kind of, it just, you know, we got the deal that I wanted for us, and that was it. And then we pulled it down off of Bandcamp, and then he said, okay, we'll release it in March. And then he pulled off the biggest miracle of all, because I'd said when we signed, I was like, man, we really want to tour Europe and all this shit. And he's like, this is a record deal. It's not, because he's also a booking agent. He's like, this is not for a tour. I said, all right, you know, like, I was like, I don't give a fuck, whatever. It's coming out on vinyl. And you know, 4 days, or let's say a month ago, you know, this was just a joke to us. Not a joke, but you know, it was something that we didn't start with the intention of it going where it went. And then, so literally, in typical Gabe fashion of him being like, nah, there's no tour. I said, all right, man, that's cool. You know, whatever. 3 days later, he's like, how about a High Reaper tour? I said, okay, man. He's like, how long can you do? Can you do a month? And we said, yeah, we'll do a month. And then he somehow, through who knows how, managed to book us for a tour when we were an unknown band who had 6 gigs in the United States, and got us on Desert Fest Berlin on our first tour. And that was I believe it was in April, and the record had come out in March. And you know, and then we proceeded to do 2 more month-long tours over the next, let's say about 14 more months. And so we did almost 90 shows in 3 months in Europe.
Yeah, wow.
Coming from nowhere.
Yeah, and you weren't expecting to do this. No.
And we did good in the US. And then, you know, COVID hit and kind of threw everything off. But then we went out and toured after COVID anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was really a whirlwind, because we went from like thinking like, all right, you know, we're going to play, you know, Philly, and we'll play New York, and God, this is so washed out. Sorry, everyone. But
you really went in the side door with the whole the doom metal, all that stuff, to kind of get in that scene. It's pretty cool that you kind of like rediscovered it. You were like, you wanted to go for something, but then you found out there was a community for it.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that it was something I was a part of 20 years earlier, 30 years, or 25 years earlier. Like I said, I was playing with fucking Carmen and Byrne back then, and our roadies played Sleep fucking, I don't know how many times they played Holy Mountain when we were, you know, on tour and stuff. And Monster Magnet. And I couldn't believe we're playing fucking Desert Fest Berlin, and then there's Monster Magnet. I'm thinking like, Monster Magnet, Jesus Christ, man. Like, they're still, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying I was totally oblivious because I was busy doing other shit.
Yeah, that's pretty rad. What do you think about the scene now in general? Like, what do you pull away from all these Desert Fest shows you played? And
well, I think that it's, first of all, I want to say that I think that it's really fantastic that it exists, and it would not exist without the support of fans, you know. And it's really incredible because like it's, as a musician, like it's just as satisfying as playing the 300 people. To me, is just as satisfying as playing the 15,000. I don't you know, the fact that anyone's willing to show up is it's crazy. The fact that it exists is crazy to me, because I only wish it was, you know, I wish it was more like that in the States. In Europe, it's, you know, it's really supportive, and as a touring band, you know, they go out of their way to kind of accommodate you, and you get fed, and you get a place to sleep. And you know, the U.S. it's hard going, and that's why we have a bus here. You know, we have a tour bus, but you know, in Europe we can get away with the van and stuff. But nonetheless, just that there's any scene, even in the States, is great. And you know, every little bit helps. And people, when you're on the outside, you really don't realize how important the promoters are, who are willing to take the risk to have a show, because most of them, you know, it's not a money-making venture for them in any way, but they are also or have been musicians, and they you know, they support the scene. I mean, like it's like guys like there's a guy Sven Mueller in Dresden in Germany, you know, and he is like an example of like, you know, a guy who just loves music and wants to support music, and he does, and it's really those guys. There's so many of them in Europe, and it's really great. I mean, and it's everybody together. You know, of course, people come out to the show and they pay to see you and they buy your merch, and those promoters are scrambling to make those shows happen, having a venue. And I mean, not only in Europe, but of course here too. I mean, locally we have really in Philly we happen to have, you know, good venues like Johnny Brenda's and Kung Fu Necktie and like Or Leaves and stuff that are supportive. You know, it takes everybody.
Yeah. No, it's
It
a
does.
lot of moving parts.
You
I
know,
think what's so cool about that scene in general is everybody does want to buy albums. Everybody does want to buy the shirts. Everybody's like they want to go on Bandcamp, throw a few bucks your way. They want that revival.
and it's insane because all that shit really does help. And you know, every shirt. And when you're on the road, man, like every record is like a fucking, it's a coffee or it's fucking gas in your tank or whatever. It gets you. It really does. It, it makes it is a different. Every dollar on the road is a different. It is a difference maker.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's why, like I said, that's why I love that scene so much. You know, people are always rocking their shirts, their vinyls and stuff like that. It's full on, I don't know, it's kind of like the 70s, or it's what people think of as what the 70s is, because you know, a lot of young tykes in there.
But I just want to say,
Yeah.
without sounding too cheesy, it's an actual community, and it is supported top to bottom, and it is a community. It is everyone working together to support a scene that otherwise would not exist, would not be capable of existing.
Yeah. And yeah, so I'll be at Desert Fest in New York this year. I'm really excited to go. It's going to be super
Oh,
fun.
so yeah, we played last year.
Yeah. Well,
It was really great, and they're the Sarika and Reese, who organize Desert Fest London. They do New York too, and they're really great. They're another part of the scene that's super important. You know, just like the local small promoters, the people taking the risk to do the larger shows are doing the same thing, and they're fucking great, and they're great.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see you the 18th at St. Vitus in Brooklyn, but we'll get to that wrap up there in a little bit. But I want to talk. So you've been into engineering. You're building a studio right now. What does that look like for you guys? Like, when did you get into engineering? What do you use? What programs? What
Oh,
equipment?
okay. In the 90s in that band, we had a crazy manager. So we had a spec deal, which at a studio in New York called Power Station. If you don't know what it is, you can just Google it. But it's one of the biggest studios in New York. So what a spec deal does, though, is that you relinquish part of your record deal or part of publishing your rights to music or anything to the studio in order for studio time. I mean, they probably don't really exist that much anymore because it's a total moot point. But so when we were in there for the better part of a year, and when we were in there, the owner was like, "Hey, you know, you should learn to do this." He's like, "Start learning how to do this." So I said, "Okay." So I kind of started learning over the better part of a year, learning the basics of engineering there at Power Station while my band was recording. We subsequently left there and went down to Philly to Sigma Sound, which is, if you don't know what that is, that's cool. You can also Google that and you'll see what it is. But it's a totally famous place in Philly. And when I was there, the head engineer, Mike Tarsia, He was like, I really want to work with you. I really want to teach you, blah, blah, blah. So I learned the rest. I learned the rest of my engineering chops under another guy there named Gordon Rice, but I learned mixing from Mike. And Mike and I mixed our first song together, which really was me saying, no, I like this, I don't like that, and him doing the mix. I think maybe in 94,
Okay.
maybe in 94, 95. And then we proceeded to work together for the rest of his life, which just ended last year, or well, a year ago in November or whatever. But yeah, so that's how it was. I got $1 million education for free. And so, I mean, I don't, again, I just kind of like lucked into that.
Yeah.
So after Mike died, normally I would just mix it in my house, and then I could just take my mixes to Mike's. After Sigma closed, that's another story. It's long. Anyway, like many of the big studios, they closed. I would just take my mixes or finish my mixes at Mike's studio in his house. Mike had a studio in South Philly. It was a grandparents' house that and it's the house that his father grew up in. And then he had a proper, treated real control room in his house with a mixing room with a vocal booth. So we could do overdubs there, and what I would do is I would do my mixes at home. I would take them to Mike's, check them, because my room wasn't really treated. I checked them, and then we'd master them there. And then so after Mike died, just by luck again, I was like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna. I had a studio in my house, but I decided it's just too much. So I was like, we'll just do overdubs and mixing here. Fuck all the tracking. So I sold a bunch of my stuff, and even some of my mics, and I sold my snares, and then I'm a tattooist, and then the building next to the tattoo shop became vacant. So then I said, all right, well, fuck it, I'm gonna make a studio there. So I've been building out a studio, and then there was another studio. Another friend of mine who used to, he was an assistant at Sigma. He would just assist sessions. He had a studio in Germantown. So after Sigma closed, Germantown's part of Philly. Anyway, after Sigma closed, I used to track drums always here in Germantown. Well, he died just a couple months before Mike, and then another one person in that partner in that studio left, and he moved to New York, upstate New York, and then the remaining partner, who is also a friend of mine. These are people I've known forever. We've been in the studio circle, same studio circle for 20, 30 years, whatever. I said, hey, Andrew, his name's Andrew. I said, hey, I'm getting the place next door. So if you ever get out of Germantown and you want to just come in and be partners here, just come here. And then he was like, you know what? He's like, Richie moved to New York. Artie's dead. He's like, fuck it, I'm gonna move out of Philly anyway. He's like, I'm sick of Philly. So as it turns out, the microphones I sold and the snares that I sold all came back to me, and we are putting together a studio next door. And I run Pro Tools. I mean, I learned on tape. I don't give a shit about tape. Personally, I don't care about any of that bullshit. It's cool. But I mean, I don't care about it. It's not important to me. The song and the source. The song is important. And as an engineer, the source is important. I just care about the sound. If we recorded the tape, it'll sound, it'll have tape compression probably, and it'll in saturation, and it'll probably sound a little bit different. But I mean, I choose to record digitally because I want to be able to recall my mix, and I want to be able to, and I still try and approach digital mixing as I would approach it on a console, and I don't overuse plugins, and I pretty much use one reverb for the mix, and I try to my workflow is streamlined, and I try to make decisions as if I were still mixing on a Neve, even though I'm mixing in the box. and I mix only in the box. I don't really use outboard stuff once we're mixing. I just figured, what's the point? I mean, it's not really. It's never about your plug-in. It's always about the song and the source and the performance. So maybe maybe my delay plugin, my lexicon modeler doesn't sound the exact same as a PCM 41, but I don't really give a fuck. I don't really think that, you know, Johnny in Idaho is going to be like, man, that delay on that guitar that's buried in the mix, it doesn't really sound exactly like a PCM, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So I use Pro Tools because that's what I learned on. I'm sure Reaper is probably much better. It's kind of like open source from what I understand, but I'm not going to learn something else. I have a workflow, and that's what I use. And that's, you know, like, personally, if a band wanted to record on tape, I would totally record a band on tape. I don't have any intention of getting a 2-inch machine or any machine, and I won't be recording our band on tape anytime soon. It's just, that's not part of the process. That when I write a song, I don't think, man, I can't wait to hear an 1176 because this is going to make this track so much better. Or that's not what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking like, okay, I can't wait to get the best performance for this song, and the best, and from everyone.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not thinking about, if you're looking, my opinion is that if you're looking to a tape machine or a piece of hardware or a microphone to somehow make your record better or more interesting, you're probably better served looking in different places for that.
Yeah. I like that. I like the idea, just the performance. So it's the only thing you make shit about, really.
I mean, the whole Sigma thing was always, it's the performance first, or I'm sorry, it's the song first, and then it's the performance. And you know, Joe Tarsia, he's the person who started Sigma, founded Sigma, who he just recently died also. He always said, as engineers, it's our job just not to fuck up. Like you have the musicians doing the job that they're there to do, and you know, they're probably capable. And in the Sigma days, they certainly were capable. I mean, they have fucking, you know, just killer musicians on all these tracks. And so our job as engineers is just to not fuck it up. I mean, how if you have a good drummer, I mean, how is he going to make his drums sound bad? You have a great bass player. His bass is never going to sound fucking bad. You know, like, our job is to not fuck that up. It's not to sprinkle fairy dust all over the record and somehow polish a turd into like a piece of gold. It's not the way engineering works. I mean, of course, when you're only mixing, sometimes that is what you have to do, because you will get a snare sound that you're like, who in their right fucking mind could record this? But they do that. But, you know, nonetheless, that's my feeling as a musician. I am never thinking of, whoa, man, you know, when I hear a riff, or because I write a lot of stuff in my head, you know, I'm never thinking like, man, when I put an 1176 on that guitar track, it's going to sound so much better. The record's going to be a hit. I mean, there is no preamp that ever wrote a hit song. There's no compressor that ever wrote a hit song or recorded a hit vocal track, or I mean, not even a hit, but no tape machine wrote a riff for anyone, and no compressor wrote a killer riff for anybody. And, you know,
I just wrote that down. I like that line.
I just concentrate on, you know, do the drums sound good? Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I get and you know, I'm a Andy Johns fan. You know, he did like Zeppelin 4. He did good Stones records. Well, I mean, lots of Stone records are good. He also did like Cinderella Night Moves, which is a killer record, by the way. And I believe he did that in Cajun, which is a closed studio that was outside of Philly. And I'm also an Andy Wiles fan. He's a completely different kind of mixer. But you know, Andy Johns, who, I mean, consider this is a guy who you know, put two mics into a compressor and ran an echo rec on there to make so he totally manipulated a sound to make when the Levy Breaks drum track. And then when digital was around, he was like, I like it better. It's like, I like it better because when I'm miking, he's like, I'm hearing more, something that sounds closer. He's like, I'm hearing what's in the room more than when I'm, recording the tape. And that's not always, listen, tape sounds great. It sounds familiar. All the classic records are recorded on. So of course, yeah. I mean, like, yes, sounds great, but I don't care. I mean, like, it's not worth the expense and inconvenience, because digital sounds great. Plugins sound great. I mean, you can see it all the time on Gear Sluts when people do A/B blind tests. It's always 50-50. No one ever, the people who with pedigrees that has reached from here to the moon are guessing the digital one and calling it analog. I mean, you can see it. You can see it with wine tasting. You can see it in anything that is really subjective. It's all, the answers are always going to be the same, which is all over the place.
And that doesn't happen with a band. You can't make that shit up with a band. A bad sounding band's never going to be A/B against a good band.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you again, something else you can stretch to the moon are a million records made with incredible producers that sound amazing, that are horrible records, and there's a stack of them, littered all over. There's a million records that suck, that major labels paid $1 million to make with the best producers and the best engineers, and the records suck, even by good bands. That they made a stinker, and they were recorded in the best way you could ever imagine, and nothing, with the best producers and all the best help, and it's still, so it's not. It's really, it always boils down to, number one thing is it good? And with a pop song, it's the melody. And with a metal song, it's like, does the riff get you? Does something get, with a metal song, it's not usually, it's unique in the sense that it's not usually the melody. It's like, hey, is this riff, is this thing knocking?
Yeah. Well, love all that. I just want to make sure we get.
All right, I talk so much. I know I do.
No. I hope to catch you at the show a little bit. Kind of keep on talking about this, because I could go on with this forever. So
we didn't even get into drumming nerd stuff yet. I mean,
exactly that. I mean, that's a whole other. Yeah, drumming. Drumming that's what really shows somebody's colors. I'm not.
I can go very deep.
So
I can get very, very, very deep on that.
And let's do
that. Okay, that's just a warning.
Yeah. I really want to talk. I really need to ask this. How did you get on to playing the Volume 4 Redux? How did that come about for you guys?
This might have still been when Mike had the label. I mean, Jad was still running it. I either messaged Jad or Mike, because I had already had a relationship with one of them. I was like, yo, get us, no, I know what happened. No, it might have been
for those who don't know, why don't you walk us through it?
What, that record?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, well, Magnetic Eye does do these like Redux records, and they've done like Dirt, they've done Meantime by Helmet. I saw that tour, I think, that Helmet tour at the Troc. My friend Zen Gorilla, I think, opened that show. Anyway, I believe that Mike messaged. I run HPS Instagram and Facebook, and I'm on the press team and shit. And I believe Mike messaged HPS, and I was like, you know what, Mike, we'd love to do it. I really wanted to do Supernaut, but then after a bunch of chatting, we said, fuck it, we'll just do Changes, which was that was a mistake, but
a hard song. It turned out great.
God, well, it was difficult. I did about 4 versions of that song before I came to that. I did all acoustic, all Mellotron, I had a bunch of versions of that. And then one night I said, fuck it, I'm just going to rewrite this song.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
And you got something a little special because you went down to drop C during it. Is that right?
Yeah, and then we just kept after that. Because I thought it would sound really, because I wanted to make it heavy, and I was like, okay, I can't write this in standard tuning and make it sound heavy. It's going to sound fucking stupid. And I said, all right. I said, well, the song's in C. This way we'll keep the song in C, so people aren't going to be weirded out by Zach singing the melody in some other key, you know, because I was trying to be conscious of that.
Yeah.
So that's what, so I apologize to everyone who thinks it's stupid, but
I know. I think it's awesome. Yeah, so I mean, so you guys went down drop C from there. I mean, so if anything, even if you weren't like the most stoked on it, you know, you got something cool out of it.
So, and then so we always act like drop. It's C standard. So yeah, so then that put us in C standard for moving forward.
Yeah, fuck yeah. A few things, I guess, kind of just because I mean, you've been very gracious with your time. I really appreciate this.
Oh, it's no problem.
I feel like we could also talk for another 2.5 hours just about the recording and all this shit.
That's right. Don't test me.
I would love to. I love that stuff. I just moved to New York City, so I'm getting into the whole trying to get my way into some studios and all that stuff right now, and I'm trying to find the best stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
where in New York are you?
I'm in Brooklyn right now. We just got an apartment in Bushwick, but I don't care. I'm all over the place.
Okay. Well, yeah. I don't know anymore because I'm not really up there much anymore, just for shows. So I'm very out of touch when it comes to that.
Well, if anything comes up in your head, you know, pop them my way. So let's just go into your guitar rig really quick. What makes your guys sound? Because that is, I think, the most unique of what pops out to me the most.
Believe it or not, we are very plug and play. I plug directly. I mean, well, most of the stuff, I mean, pretty much Pat has played all the rhythms on everything. First record, we did use a rock reverb. We used a Laney supergroup on some stuff. And we used, Andrew had an orange ATC 140 or something. I can't remember what the name of that thing is. Then on the second record was all rock reverb. I think, no, it was rock reverb and Andrew still. On Doom Sessions, it was, and I want to say it's really just plug and play. Pat will sometimes use he will sometimes use a full drive, but just for a clean boost. So just to give a little more clean boost. Me, I just plug in and play, although I've only been playing solos and stuff. Like even on the one we just released, I just played the solo on it and the bass. Yeah. I mean, yeah, so, but it's pretty much direct into the amp. On this new record we're going to be making, I'm going to use an old head that I had, which is that is heavily modded. So we'll be using Pat's rock reverb. I won't be using my rock reverb on this one. I will be using a Coke multi-tone.
How was it modded? What did you do?
It's too scooped in the mids, so it's just most of that stuff came from just trying to coax more mids out of it. So the tone stack's a little bit. It's not normal what the Coke tone stack was originally, but it's very high gain. I can't say that anymore because now high gain amps are. It's in the. I would say it's in the league of a rock reverb with a tiny bit more gain, but it does not sound like a rock reverb. So for this new record, I just want to give a little bit more of contrast between each guitar. So, and I'll be, well, Pat also, I want to say that he has an Artisan that he's been, with the newer stuff, he's been using this Les Paul Artisan, and that has much hotter pickups. So I think that they're about 17 k-ohm, I think, the bridge pickup, so it's a hotter pickup. And I'll be recording with my Ibanez's with hot pickups too. So I think my one is a prototype pickup. It's somewhere around 20K, and the other one's close to 30.
Damn. All right.
So they're kind of slamming the front end of the amps.
Pretty cool. All right.
But very, very simple. I've always tried to, and I kind of helped impart that on Pat, is that I've always just I even back in the 90s, I just plugged right in and played. When I use my vintage orange stuff, I would put something in front of it just to get a little, because so I didn't have to play on 10, you know, to get it to break up. But I also had an orange overdrive, and that was like a 75 or something, and that nothing in front of it. And then, but I did have a boogie sometime, and that I would just plug right into that too. Nothing. I use just a delay pedal live. Pat has some other stuff like a phaser and shit like that, but I just have a delay pedal.
It's pretty simple. You guys just dial in exactly how you want it, I guess. Yeah.
Same with bass. With bass, always just plug right in. I don't, you know, I try to keep it.
Wow, cool. Yeah, yeah, I think there's just this metallic tone that you guys get that I think is like really unique to your style. I guess
That's how I mix it.
yeah. Well, fucking rad.
Like,
Yeah, well, thing I like to ask every person you have on the show, chef, artist, sculptor, painter, visual, whatever. I like to always ask them, what is your version of success for you, or for what do you think people should be looking for?
my version of success is just anyone responding positively to anything that you've done, and as an I think that's really it. I mean, when you do something, even if you don't do it with the intention of being like, oh, this is my life's work or whatever, you know, if you create something as a creator or whatever, if you create something and it speaks to someone on any level, then that is success. Because I'm gonna fucking go crazy with this stupid fucking light. Sorry. So anyway, I still washed out. Yeah, I mean that's it. If you create something and people respond to it positively, then you know you it's funny because you will more often than not miss the mark if you're creating something in order for people to respond to it. So as you know, like if you say, oh, if I do it like this, these people will like it, or if I do this, you have to kind of like let go of that, which is, I think, probably part of the reason why our first record was received well, was because we made it without the intention of doing anything with it. You know, it wasn't contrived because there was nothing for us to contrive. We were just wanting to write a hard record, and we weren't thinking of like, oh man, I didn't even know if we were going to put it out, you know?
Yeah, right.
Was like, oh.
You weren't expecting to go on tour. You weren't expecting to play festivals. You weren't none of that.
No.
You didn't even know there was a scene for it.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, that's you know, if you're expecting riches or expect to be a millionaire or something, you should probably not be a musician. I mean, I've had real jobs as a musician, but I've turned down lots and lots of jobs because they're not like touring jobs and playing for people and stuff, because that's not satisfying for me. I did have a job in TV. I was like a musical director on a TV show, which that was fine. That was because it was more like a regular day-to-day job, I guess you could kind of say. But as far as like, for me, I can't tour and play other people's music. I just can't do it. I just don't. I would do it like for my friends, like for a fill-in or something, but as like a job, like being hired to play somebody else's stuff, I just would never. There's just not enough. There is not enough money to get me to do that, because it's not satisfying as you know, as a creator. You're not doing anything. You're just performing a technical task.
Yeah, it takes away why you even started doing this.
So. I'd rather just be running or doing something else.
Yeah, well, yeah, I like that. It's all good stuff to know. Well, you guys, High Reaper is playing at St. Vitus on Saturday, March 18th, with Ruby and the Hatchet and Leather Lung.
That's right.
Is there anything else you want to say to the fans out there? This has been a really, really fun talk. I've had a really good time talking with you, but is there anything?
I'm sorry sorry that I talk too much.
No,
Uh,
I don't know if you know,
um,
but the point of a podcast is just to talk. So
thank you for supporting us. I would say all those things, and we are. The studio is like at 80% completion, so all the walls are up. It's painted, so we can rehearse in there at least. So we are in the slow process of finishing that off, and we will be making a record as soon as the studio is put together. It's going to take a couple more months to put it together, just because there's so much shit in Germantown.
you guys have been pretty prolific. What was it? You guys have been doing one album per year.
We did. We turned around to the second album really fast, and then we were going to do like an EP because we were getting ready to go on tour again, and COVID hit, and then so we took some of those songs from the EP, and then we did the Doom sessions, and then so we had a couple songs left over, and since we hadn't done anything, we released this a couple weeks ago because just for no reason, just to so people didn't forget us.
That's always a good thing. Just shout out in the wind. Hey, we're still alive.
Hey, we're alive.
Yeah. Well,
That's
hey,
awesome.
can't wait to see you guys. It's been super fun, Shane. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for being on Zen Perry Project. Yeah, and I'll be talking to you soon. All right.
Right on. Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day, man.
You too. Bye-bye.